The Zocs were an ancient race, their civilization spanning millennia across the galaxies, revered for their wisdom and technological marvels. They were thought to be immortal until they encountered the humans. This chance meeting would upend their entire existence and shake the foundations of their society to the core. The first incursion caught the galaxies off guard. Whispers of strange occurrences rippled through the outer systems. Mining crews vanishing, ships found adrift with no signs of struggle. At first, they were dismissed as mere spacers' tales, the ramblings of those too long isolated in the void. But then the incidents grew more brazen, more frequent. Heavily fortified outposts were boarded, and their inhabitants slaughtered with chilling brutality. The pattern was unmistakable. Someone or something was hunting, and they were headed toward the core systems, their advance as inexorable as their purpose was unknown. The Zocs High Council convened emergency meetings, their towering spires glowing with frantic activity, their ancient power now threatened by an unknown force. They had encountered countless new species over their long existence, sometimes welcoming them into the galactic community, other times defending their territory through military force. But they had never faced something like this. An adversary of unknown origin and motivations, one that struck with terrifying precision and showed no desire to communicate, an enemy that seemed to defy their understanding, their weapons, their very concept of warfare. As the attacks intensified, the truth became undeniable. This was not a new race they could parley with or fight in conventional ways. This was an extermination force, bent on the eradication of all life, their actions as brutal as their purpose was clear, their existence now a threat to all they held dear. The Zioxiect finally brought their ancient race to its knees, their carefully constructed world now threatened by the cold, unforgiving truth of a new and brutal reality. Little did they know, their salvation would come from the most unlikely of sources. The humans, a newly emerged species from an insignificant outer colony. Their presence so insignificant that it had been overlooked by the Zocs for centuries. Underestimated at first, the tenacity and ingenuity of these upstart warriors would reshape the galaxy forever. For when the Zocs met humanity, they encountered a strength and ferocity they had never witnessed before. A determination to survive that was as unwavering as it was inspiring. Their first contact with a race that simply refused to be extinguished, their every action a testament to their refusal to surrender. The outer colonies had fallen into chaos, outposts going dark, entire populations disappearing without a trace, each loss a grim reminder of the encroaching threat, their fate now a warning to all, their sacrifices a testament to the courage of those who had faced the unknown, their silence a prelude to the coming storm. It started as a trickle, isolated incidents easily explained away as raiders or rogue AI attacks. But then the trickle became a flood, as whole sectors were swallowed by the encroaching threat, their careful attempts at understanding now replaced by a desperate need to survive. The unknown enemy now as unstoppable as their own fear was overwhelming. On the harsh, unforgiving world of Cath 5, a small human settlement came under siege, its relative isolation now a target for the unseen enemy. Alarms blared through the night as unknown hostiles breached the perimeter defenses, the once peaceful existence of the colony shattered by the harsh reality of the impending conflict, their careful world now collapsing under the weight of the invasion, their hope now a fragile flicker against the darkness. Vance Brown was roused from sleep by the deafening klaxons, his mind racing, his heart pounding, his every instinct screaming for survival. His wife, Alara, was already pulling on her armor, her movements as swift as her purpose was clear, her resolve as strong as his own. "They're here," she said grimly, tossing him his sidearm, her voice a testament to her determination. "Suit up. We need to get to the shelters." Vance's stomach clenched, his body tensing with a mixture of fear and adrenaline as he hurriedly dressed, his mind racing with the stories he had heard, his heart pounding in his chest, his resolve now hardening into a steely determination. For months they had heard the rumors, the stories filtering in from other colonies about whole populations being wiped out by some unknown enemy, their fate a warning to all, their suffering a haunting reminder of their impending doom. He had hoped, prayed even, that the threat would pass them by on this remote, unimportant world, their insignificance a source of comfort and false security. But now the nightmare had arrived, their worst fears now a terrifying reality, their carefully constructed world now in ruins. "What about the others?" he asked, his voice low, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and apprehension, his gaze locking with his wife's, his heart aching for the people he had vowed to protect. He grabbed Alara's hand as they raced from their quarters, their movements swift and purposeful, their actions now driven by the need to survive, their carefully constructed world now a memory, their future now uncertain. Outside, the colony was a blur of panic and chaos, as soldiers and civilians scrambled for safety, their carefully constructed routines now shattered by the cold, harsh reality of the impending conflict, their every action now driven by a desperate desire to survive. "Forget them," she replied, her voice hard, her gaze unwavering, her tone as cold as the battle that was unfolding before them, her every instinct screaming for survival, her actions as precise as her purpose was clear. "Our only priority is getting Kyla to the shelters. After that, it's every man for himself." Vance felt sick at her words, the cold reality of their situation, a harsh reminder of the brutality they faced. His heart aching for the innocent lives that were about to be extinguished, his responsibility to protect his daughter now the driving force behind his actions. But he knew she was right. Whatever was attacking, it showed no mercy to any living thing in its path. Their relentless advance now a testament to their destructive power, their lack of compassion as terrifying as their efficiency, their actions a harbinger of the doom that threatened them all. Their only hope was to reach the underground shelters and pray they could ride out the assault, to wait and see if anyone would ever come to their rescue, their hope now a fragile flicker against the darkness. They found their daughter, Kyla, huddled with a group of other children, their eyes wide with terror, their bodies trembling with fear, their innocence a stark contrast to the violence that was now consuming their world, their carefully constructed lives now a reminder of the hope that was now being extinguished. Alara scooped the girl up, her touch as tender as her heart was strong, and they sprinted for the nearest shelter entrance, their movements as swift as their purpose was clear, their bodies dodging the streams of weapons fire that crisscrossed the smoke-choked air, their path now a gauntlet of danger, their every step a risk of certain death, their every action a testament to their desperation, to their love for each other, to their fierce desire to survive. All around them, the colony was being torn apart, buildings shredded by high explosives and energy beams, the sounds of destruction echoing through the night, a constant reminder of the brutal power of their attackers. A bone-rattling explosion rocked the ground, flinging them from their feet, their bodies as fragile as their hope, their world now transforming into a nightmarish landscape of smoke and fire, their every attempt to survive now a desperate gamble. Vance's head slammed into the ferrocrete, lights exploding across his vision, his head spinning, his body aching, his every instinct screaming for survival. He could taste blood in his mouth as he struggled back to his feet, his mind racing, his heart pounding in his chest, searching wildly for his wife and child, the fear of losing them now as strong as his love, his every move now driven by the need to protect them. "Alara!" he screamed, his voice swallowed by the cacophony of battle, the sound as lost as his hope for salvation. "Kyla!" Then, 20 meters away, he saw them stir, Alara shielding Kyla's small body with her own, their actions a testament to their love, their bodies a shield against the dangers that surrounded them. Vance sprinted over, oblivious to the danger, his feet pounding on the scorched earth, his every instinct now focused on saving his family, his love now his greatest strength, his determination now an unstoppable force, hauling them both upright with his massive arms, his strength a powerful shield against the forces that sought to destroy them, his heart aching with a mixture of relief and fear, his actions driven by a fierce and unyielding determination. "We're almost there. Come on!" He roared over the shriek of incoming fire, his voice as powerful as his love, his every action a testament to his strength, his resolve now as strong as his desire to protect his family. They reached the shelter entrance as another salvo shook the ground, the very foundations of their world groaning under the weight of the attack, their every step now a race against time. Vance punched the access code with bloodied fingers, his every action as precise as his movements were desperate, his heart pounding in his chest, his hopes pinned on the safety of the shelters. The armored doors ground open with aching slowness, each moment a heart-stopping eternity, the shelter now their only hope for survival, their fear now a constant, unwelcome companion. He hurled Alara and Kyla through, his heart aching with a mixture of love and fear, his soul filled with a desperate hope that they would survive, his every instinct screaming for their protection, his actions now driven by his need to keep them safe, to give them a future, to save them from the hell that was now being unleashed upon their world. Then, he turned to face whatever fresh hell was descending on them, his back to the door, his body a shield against the horrors that lay beyond, his gaze as cold as his resolve was strong, his actions as determined as they were terrifying. What he saw would be seared into his mind forever, a constant reminder of the horror he had faced, a testament to the brutality of their attackers, a vision of death and destruction that would forever haunt his dreams. The enemy poured through the shattered perimeter like smoke, their forms indistinct and ever-shifting, a terrifying display of power and menace, their very presence a source of abject terror, their every action a symbol of the destruction that was now consuming them all. One moment they appeared as nightmarish creatures of tooth and claw, their bodies as monstrous as their intent, their every action driven by a thirst for blood, a desire for annihilation. The next, as advanced, mechanized warriors, wreathed in energy fields, their technology as terrifying as their brutality, their actions as efficient as they were merciless, their purpose now as clear as it was chilling. They floated across the battlefield, an unstoppable tide of destruction that reduced everything in its path to ruin, their power now as overwhelming as their desire for annihilation was complete, their every action now a testament to the hopelessness of their situation. Vance felt his blood run cold, a primal fear that chilled him to the bone, his carefully constructed world now reduced to nothing but a pile of ash and dust, his life now threatened by a force that was beyond his comprehension. This was no mere raider attack, no AI insurgency, their former enemies now a distant memory, their threat as insignificant as their purpose was clear. This was something far worse, far more powerful than anything they could comprehend, a force that had come to extinguish life, to destroy existence itself, their power as absolute as their purpose was clear, their every action now designed to destroy everything he held dear. As the monstrosities surged forward, their presence as terrifying as their power, Vance realized the terrible truth they were facing, the harsh reality of their inevitable fate. They were facing oblivion itself, the forces of destruction now about to claim their lives, their destiny now in the hands of a force that was as uncaring as it was unyielding, their hope now a distant memory, their actions now a desperate attempt to hold onto what little remained. Grabbing the last civilian he saw, a terrified young woman clutching her severed arm, her face a mixture of pain and fear, her eyes as wide with terror as her world had been torn apart, Vance shoved her into the shelter, his actions a testament to his humanity, his heart now aching with a mixture of love and responsibility, his desire to protect those around him now as strong as his desire to survive. He sealed the hatch, his actions as precise as his resolve was strong, his mind racing with possibilities, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination, his every action now designed to protect the innocent from the horrors that now lay beyond their door. He could only pray the armored doors would give them some protection from whatever fresh hell was about to be unleashed. His hope a fragile whisper against the storm. "Alara, get on the comms," he shouted, his voice as powerful as his resolve was strong, his body trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, his every action now driven by a desperate need to do something, anything. "Broadcast a general distress call on all frequencies. We need evac. Any ships in the sector need to get us the hell off this rock." His wife was already working the comm panel, her face pale but her movements sure and steady, her every action a testament to her courage and her skill, her voice as strong as her heart was brave, her every effort now focused on giving them a chance, however slim. "Sending it out now," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of fear and determination, her every word a prayer for salvation. "But Vance? Who's going to receive it?" Her voice trembled for a moment, her resolve wavering, her fears a mirror of his own. "You saw what's out there. If that's come for us, what chance do we have?" He shook his head grimly, his heart pounding in his chest, his gaze unwavering, his resolve hardening, his voice low and dangerous, his determination now a shield against despair. "I don't know, but like hell I'm giving up without a fight. If we're going down, it'll be swinging every step of the way," he said, his words a promise of defiance, a testament to his unyielding spirit, a refusal to surrender, a battle cry against the darkness that now threatened to consume them all. Alara managed a grim smile, a flicker of hope in her eyes, her gaze locking with his, their love now a powerful force that propelled them forward, her every action a testament to her courage, her actions a promise of loyalty, her love a beacon that shone brightly against the darkness. She kissed him fiercely, her lips as urgent as her touch was desperate, their love now a refuge against the storm. "That's my husband. Give him hell, love," she said, her voice soft, her eyes burning with a mixture of love and pride, her words a blessing, a promise of hope, a testament to her unwavering faith in the man she had chosen to spend her life with. As she ducked back into the shelter, Vance turned to face the oncoming nightmare, his back to the safety of the shelters, his body a shield against the horrors that lay beyond, his rifle raised, his finger on the trigger, his every action a testament to his refusal to surrender. All around, those still topside were dying in horrific ways, their bodies shredded and broken, their screams now silent, their lives now extinguished by the brutality of their enemy, their suffering a testament to the horrors they had been forced to endure. He could see the muzzle flashes of the few soldiers still returning fire, their efforts as futile as they were brave, their bodies now as fragile as their hope, their courage a final act of defiance against the forces of destruction. But their efforts were futile against this implacable foe, their weapons proving useless against an enemy that seemed to transcend all human comprehension. Something shifted in the mass of enemies before him, a ripple in the darkness, a subtle shift in the shifting forms, a moment of transformation that was as terrifying as it was unnatural. A new shape emerged, larger and more defined than the others, its form now as solid as its intent was clear. As it solidified, Vance found himself staring at what appeared to be an immense, mechanized warrior, bristling with heavy armaments, its every surface gleaming with a dark, sinister energy, wreathed in shimmering energy fields, its very presence a promise of death and destruction. It fixed him with a pitiless, inhuman gaze, sensors glowing malevolently, the sight of them chilling him to the bone, their presence a constant reminder of the horror they faced, their inhuman eyes as cold as their intent was brutal. Vance felt a frisson of pure, atavistic terror claw its way up his spine, a fear that was as primal as it was overwhelming, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind racing with a mixture of terror and adrenaline, his careful world now transformed into a nightmarish hellscape, his carefully constructed courage now crumbling under the weight of the sheer power of the enemy before him. This was the stuff of his worst nightmares, given form and purpose, the culmination of all his fears, the darkness that had haunted his dreams, now a terrifying reality. Raising his rifle, his hands trembling, his body shaking with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, he opened fire, the heavy slugs pounding feebly against the creature's shields, his every attempt to damage it as futile as it was brave. His actions now a testament to his defiance, his heart now filled with a mixture of fear and rage, his soul burning with a desire to fight, to survive, to protect those he loved. It didn't even flinch, the bullets as insignificant as his efforts to protect them, their power as useless against the might of his enemy. their weapons proving as inadequate as his hope for survival. It just continued its inexorable advance, its movements as fluid as they were precise, its actions as calculated as they were brutal, its very presence a promise of destruction. Clearly savoring the sight of this lone human's defiance, the entity now focused solely on him, its attention now a cruel reminder of his insignificance, its power as absolute as its intent was clear, his presence a harbinger of death. Vance was prepared to die, his heart as calm as his soul was at peace, his life now a sacrifice to protect those he loved, his actions now as brave as his body was terrified. What he wasn't prepared for was the wave of agonizing cold that washed over him, a sensation that was as terrifying as it was debilitating, his body freezing from the inside out, the very life being drained from his cells, his every action now a futile attempt to resist the inevitable, his every thought now a testament to the horror of the moment. He collapsed to his knees, his rifle falling from numb fingers, his body as heavy as his hope was gone, his every effort to survive now as useless as his carefully constructed world had become. As the entity approached, looming over him, a towering manifestation of death itself, his fate now sealed by the power of his enemy, his carefully constructed world now crumbling to dust, Vance felt a mixture of peace and despair, a sense of finality that was as terrifying as it was strangely comforting. Just before the darkness claimed him, his heart pounding in his chest, his mind fading in and out of consciousness, his body now numb, his soul now finally at peace, Vance thought he saw something flicker across its impassive faceplate, a spark of something that was almost like human emotion, amusement. Then oblivion took him, his consciousness extinguished, his life now a fleeting memory. The attack on Cath 5 was just the beginning, a single instance in a larger pattern of destruction. A brutal act of violence that was now echoing across the outer colonies, a constant reminder of the implacable foe they now faced, the careful world they had built now threatened with extinction. Within solar weeks, the pattern repeated itself across a dozen other human colony worlds in the outer systems, the attacks as frequent as they were brutal, the losses now as devastating as they were insurmountable, the once vibrant colonies now reduced to nothing but a collection of empty ruins, their careful world now a testament to the power of the forces they faced. Settlements were wiped out, populations slaughtered en masse by the remorseless, unstoppable enemy, their actions now a reminder of the brutality of their nature, their advance as relentless as their purpose was clear, their desire for destruction as complete as it was terrifying. On the fortified world of Hine, a sprawling military-industrial complex, built to withstand any attack, the response was swift and brutal. The might of human military power now as vast as their desperation was real, their every action now driven by a need to survive. General Marcus Kane watched grimly from the command bunker, his face as hard as his gaze was cold, as the first enemy contacts appeared on the sensor screens, their approach as deliberate as their intent was clear, their actions a promise of devastation. "They're really going to try and take this place?" he asked, his voice a growl, his hands clenched into fists, his body tense, his carefully constructed plan now about to be tested, his every instinct screaming for action. "After the pounding we gave them at Korth? Seems that way, sir," his ops officer replied tightly, her tone as professional as her face was pale, her gaze fixed on the screens, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and determination, her every action designed to ensure their survival, their every move now a testament to the desperation they felt. "We've got multiple hostile formations incoming from every vector. Readings are highly erratic. Keeping target locks is proving extremely difficult." Kane scowled, his jaw tightening, his gaze fixed on the screens, his every instinct screaming for a way to overcome the insurmountable odds. That matched the reports from the other engagements. These things, whatever they were, seemed to exist in a constant state of flux, their physical forms and energy signatures shifting and mutating with each passing moment, their very nature as elusive as their purpose was clear, their forms now a constant, unwelcome reminder of the dangers they faced, their power now as terrifying as it was undeniable. It made them incredibly hard to get a solid lock on, much less damage. Their every move as unpredictable as their every attack was deadly. Their nature as terrifying as their purpose was clear. "Well, we'll just have to hit them harder then," he said. His voice as cold as his gaze was sharp. His every word a challenge to the fear that was threatening to overwhelm them. "This is Hein, the single most fortified world in the outer systems. If they want a piece of us, we'll make them regret every single nanometer of ground." He opened a channel to the System Defense Command. His actions as decisive as his words were harsh. His body tensing, his mind racing with possibilities, his plan now as brutal as it was necessary. His every move now driven by a need to protect his world, to ensure the survival of his people. "This is General Kane. Initiate long strike protocol. I want every gun, missile, and bomb we've got ready to blanket those bastards the second they hit our outer markers. We're not going to give them a single second to dig in." "Aye, General," the voice responded, as cold as his own, its words as efficient as their intent. Their every action now focused on unleashing a storm of destruction on their enemies, the carefully constructed defenses now poised to strike. "Long Strike is armed and awaiting your command." Kane watched the telemetry screens as the first enemy formations crossed into Hein's outer defensive rings, his heart pounding in his chest, his gaze unwavering, his purpose clear, his every action now designed to inflict as much damage as possible. At his nod, the world's gunners opened up, filling the void with enough ordnance to shatter a small moon. Their firepower now a desperate attempt to stem the tide of destruction. Their actions now as brutal as their situation was desperate. The bombardment was utterly, savagely relentless. Each blast a reminder of the power that humanity now possessed. Their every move now driven by a need to survive. Their fear now transformed into a brutal, unforgiving rage. Entire enemy formations were simply vaporized in the first few volleys, their shifting forms unable to withstand the sheer, overwhelming volume of fire. The force of their attack now a testament to their determination, their willingness to sacrifice everything in the fight for survival. Kane allowed himself a thin smile, a fleeting glimpse of satisfaction that masked the fear and apprehension that churned within him, his heart still heavy with the knowledge of the losses they had already endured. As he saw the first breakthrough runs get chewed to rags, his pride as fierce as his hate was potent, his every action now designed to inflict as much damage as possible, his resolve as strong as his desire to protect his world. "That's right, you alien sons of—" he growled, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and hatred, his gaze as hard as his heart was cold. "Just try and take this rock from us." But even as he spoke, fresh enemy contacts were flooding in, surging through the gaps in the firestorm in ever greater numbers. The enemy forces as endless as their desire for destruction, their implacable advance now as unstoppable as their purpose was clear. Kane's smile faded, replaced by a grim look of understanding, his every move now driven by the desperation of their situation, his hope of victory now as fragile as the world they had sought to defend. He saw the sheer, incomprehensible scale of the attack forming up, his eyes wide with disbelief, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth he now faced. "They just keep coming," his ops officer said, the awe evident in her voice, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and determination, her every action now driven by a need to survive, her gaze fixed on the screens, her voice barely a whisper, the sheer scope of the destruction now threatening to overwhelm her. "Sir, there's too many of them. We'll be overrun within the hour at this rate." Kane shook his head, feeling a cold knot of dread in his gut, his resolve hardening, his purpose now clear, his voice as cold as his heart was hard, his every action now designed to protect his world, his every thought now focused on the fight for survival. "No, not overrun," he said grimly, his voice as cold as his heart was heavy, his every word a testament to his determination. "Exterminated," he added, his gaze locking with hers, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sadness, his voice a promise to his people, his every action now driven by a desire to protect them, to make them remember, to never forget the sacrifice they had made. The general knew the reports coming in from the other colonies, the truth that had become all too clear. These things showed no interest in capture or conquest, only the complete eradication of all human life. Their presence now as terrifying as their purpose was clear, their desire for destruction now as absolute as it was relentless, their actions now a testament to the brutal reality of the forces they faced. And they were throwing everything they had at Hein, the single greatest concentration of military force in the outer systems, their desire for annihilation as fierce as their purpose was clear, their every action now a testament to the desperation of the moment. If they fell here, the path to the inner colonies would be wide open, and there would be nothing to stop the enemy's remorseless advance. Their careful world now on the brink of destruction, their hope now a fragile whisper in the face of the storm. "Get me a line to High Command," he said grimly, his voice as cold as his heart was heavy, his actions now driven by a need to find a way, any way to turn the tide. "We need to discuss contingencies." The battle raged across Hein for 3 days, a brutal and unrelenting conflict that stretched the human spirit to its very limits. A desperate fight for survival against an implacable foe, the hope of victory as fragile as the world they were now defending. The defenders fought with a tenacity bordering on madness, unleashing everything they had at the implacable foe, their every action a testament to their bravery, their hearts filled with a mixture of fear and determination, their desire to protect their home as strong as their love for their families. Whole regiments of mechs and armor were chewed apart by the shifting energy fields and molecular disruptors of the enemy, their own weapons proving woefully inadequate, their best efforts reduced to nothing more than a futile attempt to hold back the tide of death and destruction that now threatened to engulf them all. Through it all, Cain refused to give ground, his every action now driven by a need to protect his people, his every decision now a gamble against fate, his hope now as fragile as the world they sought to protect. He rallied his troops, urged them to fight on, even as their numbers dwindled and their supplies ran dry. His leadership a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. His words as powerful as his conviction was strong. His actions a testament to the indomitable spirit of the human race. In the end, it was a single act of defiance that bought them the time they needed, a last desperate gamble that would change the course of the war, a final act of retribution that would echo across the galaxies. Seeing the end was near, the inevitable defeat now just moments away, Cain ordered the firing of Hein's planetary demolition charges, a last-ditch weapon, designed to render the world completely uninhabitable. His plan as desperate as it was dangerous, his hope for survival now as slim as his determination to inflict as much damage as possible. As the charges went up in a series of titanic detonations, each explosion a testament to the power they were about to unleash, their actions now a desperate gamble against fate, their hopes now pinned on a slim chance for survival, they triggered a cascading reaction in Hein's unstable planetary core, the world now on the brink of destruction. Within minutes, the entire world was racked by seismic storms of unimaginable fury, the very crust buckling and shattering, their actions as desperate as their situation was dire, their carefully constructed world now about to be destroyed, their sacrifice now a desperate attempt to buy themselves a future. Cain watched on the view screens as the enemy forces were quite literally swallowed by the dying world, consumed by the energies unleashed, their implacable advance now brought to a sudden halt, their bodies now as broken and destroyed as the world they had sought to conquer, their destruction as complete as it was terrifying, a testament to the power of human defiance, a last act of retribution against a force that had sought to exterminate them. It was at that moment the evacuation transports arrived, punching through the chaos, their arrival a beacon of hope in the face of despair, their actions now driven by a desperate desire to save what was left, their every move now a race against time, a desperate hope to survive the chaos that was consuming them. They snatched the last survivors from the shattered surface, their every action now driven by a need to live, to tell their story, to carry on the fight for survival. Cain was the last man aboard, dragged into the troop bay by his exosuit, his body trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline, his heart heavy with a mixture of grief and resolve. As Hein finally tore itself apart, the very fabric of their world now being ripped asunder, the explosions now consuming the last remnants of the home they had sought to protect. As the battered transports made their way out of the system, their escape a narrow victory against the forces that had sought to destroy them, the survivors now bearing witness to a devastation that was as terrifying as it was complete. The hope of victory now a distant memory, the pain of loss now as heavy as their desire to survive, the weight of his command now bearing down upon him. The general could only stare in numb horror at the devastation they'd been forced to unleash, his heart aching for the men and women who had been left behind, the sacrifices they had made, the price of their survival now as painful as their success was bitter. Hein was gone, laid to waste to buy them a few precious hours of respite, their carefully constructed world now a collection of broken memories, their actions a testament to the brutal realities of war, their hope a fragile whisper against the darkness that lay ahead. But he knew, deep down, that it wouldn't be enough. Not against an enemy like this. Their purpose now as clear as their power was undeniable. Their remorseless advance now as inevitable as their victory was assured. Their every action now a step towards the ultimate goal, the eradication of all life. Word of the attacks reached the inner colonies in short order, the news spreading through the Zox Empire with terrifying speed, throwing the core systems into chaos, their carefully constructed world now trembling on the brink of destruction. The once invincible empire now facing an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat, their power now threatened, their authority now as fragile as their hopes for salvation. The Zox High Council found itself facing its greatest crisis in over 10 millennia of existence, the very foundations of their civilization now shaking under the weight of their impending doom, their actions now driven by a desperate need to find a way, any way, to survive. Preposterous! Overseer Kalen boomed, his voice echoing through the vaulted chambers, his carefully constructed composure crumbling under the weight of fear, his arrogant tone a clear indication of his own desperate disbelief, his every word as empty as his power had always been. You expect us to believe these humans were able to stall the enemy advance? Even temporarily? A newly emerged species from the outer fringe. His disdain for the new species now as blatant as his fear of the unknown. His careful world now falling apart around him. His arrogance now as futile as his attempts to deny the truth. I'm afraid the reports are all too real, Overseer. Admiral Kirax replied grimly, his voice low and measured, his words as precise as his actions were deliberate, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the losses they had already endured. Hein has been lost, along with several other key strongholds. His gaze was as cold as his words were stark, his tone as professional as his voice was heavy with a sense of impending doom, the truth of their situation now a terrifying and undeniable reality. The humans fought with, well, an almost insane level of determination. Whatever we think of their capabilities, they managed to slow the enemy's push, for a time.
Calon snorted derisively.
His face contorted with disgust, his every word as dismissive as his fear was real, his denial now as powerful as his arrogance was strong, his ability to comprehend the reality of their situation now completely overshadowed by the fear that had taken root in his heart. His power now as diminished as his carefully constructed world. A paltry delay at best. This council would be wise to devote its attentions to more permanent solutions. Kirax fixed the overseer with a level stare, his gaze unwavering, his expression unreadable, his heart heavy with the knowledge of their desperate situation, his mind racing with 1,000 different possibilities. With all due respect, Overseer, perhaps it is time we considered some unorthodox options. Clearly, our conventional military forces have been inadequate against this threat, he said, his voice as calm as his purpose was clear, his every word a challenge to the arrogance of his people. His carefully constructed world now threatened by the realities of the new enemy they now faced. His call for change a testament to his willingness to face the truth, however difficult it might be. A chorus of murmurs ran through the assembled counselors, their careful composure crumbling, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and apprehension. the long-held beliefs of their society now threatened by the harsh realities of the new world, their carefully constructed world now trembling on the brink of destruction. The possibility that their power was no longer absolute, now a terrifying and undeniable reality. To even suggest the Zio's martial might was lacking was tantamount to heresy. For over 10,000 cycles, they had reigned as the undisputed military power in the galaxy, enforcing their version of order and civilization on any who resisted, their arrogance now as powerful as their carefully constructed world, their power now as absolute as their confidence had always been. Now, they faced an enemy that seemed to transcend all their strategies and capabilities, a force as powerful as their resolve was faltering, their careful world now threatened by a power they could not comprehend, their future now hanging in the balance. Worse, it was headed directly for their core worlds, carving an inexorable path of destruction through the outer systems, their carefully constructed empire now threatened by a power that was as unstoppable as it was terrifying, their carefully constructed world now on the brink of annihilation. The humans have requested an audience. Kirax went on, his voice as calm as his heart was heavy, his tone as measured as his gaze was unwavering, his every action now driven by a desperate need to find a way, any way, to survive. Their General Kane was most insistent. He believes they have insights that could prove valuable in this situation. Kalen's eyes narrowed dangerously, his face contorted with anger, his carefully constructed composure now shattered. You would have us treat with these primitives? An insignificant species that, until recently, had barely achieved interstellar flight. His voice was laced with contempt, his arrogance as strong as his fear was real, his every action now a denial of the very truth that threatened to destroy them. I will not entertain such foolishness. A deep, gravelly voice rang out across the chambers, silencing the heated discussion, a voice that carried the weight of experience, the presence of authority, the power of pure, unfiltered determination. Then you're a bigger fool than I thought. All eyes turned as a powerfully built human male strode into the council's midst, his armor streaked with scorch marks and viscera, his body trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline, his every action a testament to the brutal fight he had just endured. Despite his battered appearance, he moved with an easy, rolling gait, projecting a sense of coiled menace, a promise of violence that was as potent as his gaze was unwavering. This was General Marcus Kane, and he had no time to waste on pleasantries, his every action driven by a need to survive, to protect those he loved, to fight against the forces of destruction that threatened to consume them all. You want to know what's coming for you? He growled, fixing the assembled Zocs with a baleful glare, his eyes like chips of ice, his gaze unwavering, his every word a testament to his experience, to the brutal reality of the war they now faced. His voice as cold as his resolve was strong, his presence a challenge to the carefully constructed world they had known for so long. Death, oblivion, the total eradication of every living thing. That's what's headed your way. He stabbed a finger at the holographic star projection hovering above the central dais, his every move as precise as his thoughts were clear, his every action a testament to the brutal truth they were about to face, his every word a warning to those who were so desperate to deny the reality of their situation. We call them the Hydra. Don't bother asking where they came from or what they want, because we don't know and we don't care. All that matters is they're here to wipe us out, down to the last man, woman, and child. Kane turned his glare on the stunned overseer, Kalen, his every action designed to challenge his arrogance, to shatter his carefully constructed illusions. His words as sharp as his gaze was cold, his presence a terrifying force that had descended upon their ancient world. You think my people are primitives? Maybe so, but we're the only ones who've managed to bloody the Hydra's nose so far. We hit them harder at Hine than your precious fleets have across a dozen systems, he said, his voice laced with contempt, his fist slamming into his palm for emphasis, his actions as brutal as his words were sharp, his disdain for their arrogance now a clear and undeniable force. That's because when something's trying to wipe us out, down to the last child, We don't play by your rules. We don't try and match them ship for ship, or try and reason with them. We hit them with everything we've got, until they're a smear on the bulkheads or we're all dead. It's that simple. Kirax stepped forward, his expression unreadable, his gaze searching, his mind racing to understand this new and brutal reality. You have a suggestion then, General? Some strategy to employ against this Hydra? Kane barked a harsh laugh, his voice as cold as his heart. His gaze sweeping across the faces of the assembled Zocs, his disdain for their naivete as evident as his commitment to his people. His every action designed to challenge their careful world, their long-held beliefs, their carefully constructed illusions of power. Strategy? You want strategy against an enemy like that? He shook his head in disgust, his voice low and dangerous, his gaze like ice. There's only one strategy worth a damn. Survival. We fight or we die. Those are the only choices left. The human turned his gaze to the assembled counselors, his every move designed to challenge their carefully constructed world, his every word a testament to the brutality of the war they now faced, his presence now a threat to their careful control. The Hydra's been hitting our outer colonies hard, but they're still just getting warmed up. His voice was as sharp as his gaze was hard, his words a dire warning, his actions a testament to the desperation of their situation, the limited time they had left before they were consumed by the darkness that now threatened to engulf them. From what we've seen, they're traveling through the systems in wide dispersal patterns, trying to hit multiple targets simultaneously, probably hoping to overwhelm our defenses through sheer weight of numbers. He gestured at the hologram, which showed the steadily advancing wavefronts of the Hydra forces. Their power now as undeniable as their purpose was clear, their approach as relentless as their intention was to destroy all life. But they've got to concentrate for the final push into your core systems, which means we've got one chance to hit them with everything we've got left, before they reach the really heavily fortified worlds. Kalen's eyes narrowed suspiciously, his arrogance battling against the reality of the situation, his careful control now threatened by the cold, hard truth he had just been forced to face. You propose an alliance, then? A combined force to oppose the Hydra? Hell no, Kane said bluntly, his voice as cold as his gaze was unwavering, his tone as dismissive as his resolve was strong, his plan now as brutal as it was necessary, his every action designed to ensure the survival of his people, to protect them from a fate that was worse than death. You want to throw your ships at them? Be my guest. He dismissed them with a wave of his hand, his disinterest now as blatant as his intent was clear, his words a challenge to their arrogance, a mockery of their careful plans. But my people have a different idea entirely. The general tapped a command into his wrist computer, and a new holographic projection materialized, the image as stark and unsettling as the words he was about to utter. This one showing a small, dense sphere of metal and electronics, its surface gleaming with a dark, sinister power, a weapon that was as terrifying as it was powerful. This is the Valkyrie, he said grimly, his voice low and dangerous, his gaze unwavering, his actions now as cold and calculated as his heart, his every word designed to challenge their arrogance, to expose their carefully constructed beliefs for the lie they had always been. System killer missile. An experimental weapon. Never been used in combat before. Packs a multivector cyclonic implosion warhead, designed to crack a planet's core on detonation. He looked around at their horrified faces and shrugged, his actions as defiant as his words were chilling. His every gesture a testament to the lengths they were now prepared to go to ensure their survival, his ruthlessness a reflection of the brutal realities they now faced. What, you think we're going to try and match the Hydra ship for ship? He asked, his voice as sharp as his gaze was cold, his tone laced with a mixture of contempt and desperation, his plan as brutal as it was necessary. We're going to hit them with everything we've got. One massive alpha strike with enough missiles to shatter a dozen systems. Kirax paled beneath his ceremonial robes, his earlier composure now replaced by a mixture of fear and desperation. The power of the human weapon now a terrifying reality, the knowledge of their potential destruction now a source of shock and horror, the threat that now faced them now more immediate than ever before. "General, you cannot be serious," he whispered, his voice trembling, his carefully constructed world now teetering on the edge of chaos. Such an attack could destabilize the entire region. Millions of inhabited worlds would be caught in the blast radius. "Billions," Admiral Kane said flatly, his voice as cold as his heart was hard, his gaze unwavering, his face a mask of grim determination, his every word a testament to his unwavering resolve, his every action now driven by a need to protect humanity, no matter the cost. "Maybe trillions, if we're lucky, but better that than letting the Hydra have its way. At least this way, we take the bastards with us." A shocked silence fell over the council chambers, the words hanging in the air, a testament to the brutality of the human proposal, the sheer scale of the destruction they had planned now as horrifying as it was awe-inspiring. Even the arrogant Kalen seemed stunned into silence by the human's words, his carefully constructed world now crumbling before his very eyes, his arrogance now as useless as his power was absolute, his control now lost to the raw, brutal logic of the man who had just shown them the path to victory, a choice between genocide or extinction. Kirax found his voice first, his voice barely above a whisper, his gaze wide with a mixture of fear and apprehension, his carefully constructed world now a chaos of conflicting emotions, his hope for a peaceful solution now as fragile as the world he had sought to defend. "Surely, there has to be another way," he pleaded, his actions as desperate as his heart was heavy, his words a testament to his desire to protect his people, to find a path that would not lead to destruction. A gambit, even a desperate one, that does not reduce to simple genocide. Kane shook his head, his gaze unwavering, his face as hard as stone, his body as rigid as his resolve. "You're just not getting it," he said, his voice low and dangerous, his every word as sharp as his gaze was cold, his tone as blunt as his purpose was clear. "The Hydra's already chosen genocide for all of us. We're just going to beat them to the punch." He looked around at their stricken faces contemptuously, his gaze as harsh as his words were cruel, his empathy for their plight as absent as his mercy was complete, his every action a testament to the brutal reality of the war they now faced. "But hey, don't let me stop you from trying diplomacy, or whatever other naive stunts you've got planned," he added, his voice laced with sarcasm, his gaze averted, his actions as dismissive as his words were sharp, his contempt for their weakness now as blatant as his commitment to his own people was absolute. "We'll be over here, actually doing what's needed to survive." With that, the general spun on his heel and stormed from the chambers, leaving the Zox Council to reel in his wake, their carefully constructed world now crumbling before them, their careful plans now as useless as their arrogance had become, the weight of their impending doom now finally beginning to settle in, the reality of the situation now a brutal and undeniable force.